Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something I've said quite a few times, but I want to kind of put it in a different context. And this is how we apply science. So in other words, we had a big meta-analysis come out this year that said that single joint exercises and multi-joint exercises, what bodybuilders try to call aka compounded isolation, that's their terminology for it. But again, as I've always said, I don't like that because it implies you can isolate muscles, which the laws of biology do not allow for. You can't do it. It's physically impossible. But let's come over to the point. It said that as long as the tensions being applied to the muscles are the same, that big exercises and small exercises don't cause different amounts of muscle growth in the target muscle. Now, again, the take home here being that, in other words, it's not necessary to do single joint movements if a multi-joint movement stimulates the same movement and ankle in a muscle. Now, in some cases, our normal big exercises don't do that. The perfect example would be, bench press works the triceps very effectively. In fact, fantastic tricep growth has been seen from the bench press in studies, except that the long head doesn't get as much. In other words, the lateral head gets a larger amount of the load because the movement's slightly different, right? But it still caused very large amounts of tricep hypertrophy. So in that case, though, it makes sense that for complete development, you want an extension. Okay, so let's come over, though, and let's talk a little bit about chest flies. So now that we have a context for that statement, based upon what the research says, I always tell people when they're like, why don't you ever prescribe flies? I see you prescribe smaller movements for triceps, for delts, for everything for clients, but I've never seen flies, and you say that they're a complete waste of time. And the reason I say that is it's just bad exercise economy. In other words, there is no data or evidence to suggest that, say, a fly with a dumbbell, produces more pec stimulus or hypertrophy than a bench press with a barbell or a dumbbell. There's no evidence for it, and there's no reason to believe that it does. Okay? Now, people will point out, well, but if you take dumbbells away, so now we're talking about something different. With a cable fly, you can get some tension in the contracted position that you can't get with a bench press. Well, you mean with a wide grip bench press, but a closed grip bench press you actually do. So just an FYI, you actually do get a large amount of pectoral recruitment up in the shortened position, or what they're calling the contracted position, from a closed grip bench. You actually do. So that's actually not true, but it's the question of, okay, what sort of bench press are you going to do? But isn't the question the same there? What sort of fly are you going to do? You're going to use a dumbbell versus a cable. Well, that's quite a bit different exercise, just like a wide grip bench and a closed grip bench are different. But barring that, when you look at it, there's nothing with those that you can do for pectoral activation that cannot be achieved actually with a barbell on a bench press. Right, even when they discuss, well, you could do these at inclines and declines, well, you can do a barbell bench press with that. So here's what it comes down to. There's nothing in terms of chest recruitment that we can't do with the free weights, on a multi-joint, on a press of some type. We don't lose anything. Now, people will say, well, what if I want to isolate the chest more? Well, number one, you can't isolate the chest, and then go back and look at that meta-analysis. Removing the triceps doesn't make the pecs grow faster. The pecs only care about what tension they were subjected to. They don't care, and this is what the meta-analysis shows. They do not care how much you tried to isolate them. They do not care that you managed to remove the triceps. It doesn't cause a single drop, not one drop more pectoral stimulus. Okay? not one. Doesn't cause a single drop more growth. So let's be clear there. More people are going to struggle with tricep development. In other words, all you're doing by doing that and then doing an extension, people say, well, couldn't we get the same thing from an extension? Well, no, we come over and where do extensions fall short? Well, chest pressing tends to develop the lateral head of the triceps the most. Extensions put more of that development back towards the long head. So if you're just adding extensions and flies, the lateral head of your tricep is going to lag. So you're actually losing something by doing that. By doing that same amount of volume, you are losing something. You're losing the lateral head of the tricep. You're not gaining anything in the pec. So does that make sense? So it makes sense that if we're going to add something, we should work on what's being neglected. And what's being neglected is the long head of the tricep. So yeah, we should probably consider doing some extensions on top of our chest pressing. But what we don't need is the flies, because you could just do more chest pressing to reach your chest volumes, and then you could work tricep work for the part of the tricep that is being neglected the most from the pressing. Now you'll get balance. You'll get a better stimulus out of all of it. It's going to be better balance. And you're actually going to get strong from the pressing. Do you see where we're going with this? So when that gets brought up, this is the point I raised. Number 2, tricep seems to have a higher work capacity and volume tolerance than pectorals do. Now, why is that? I think that's because we can do exactly what we just described, because the long head is being neglected. When we go to an extension, it works all 3 heads, with the long head being more biased. And that's on pretty much any extension. With the pressing, the lateral head's being biased and the long head is being reduced. They're all 3 working, but it's at different ratios. That is probably largely why it seems to have so much more work capacities, because different exercises work it quite a bit differently. Unlike the biceps, that doesn't really occur, which is why they seem to have a lower volume threshold and capacity to triceps. And I think that's really what it comes down to. But that being said, we are better off in terms of overall development if we don't do flies of any type, and we just focus on pressing, and then we fill in the other muscles with smaller movements as needed. It works out better. We end up with more total muscle mass, less use of over risk if we do it this way. And that's why I recommend it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.